Hey everybody, welcome back to the Noggin Notes podcast. I'm Jake Wiskerson, the host, and I just want to take a moment to reflect on the last 3.5 years that we've been doing this. It's pretty mind-bending to think that we've had an almost weekly podcast every week for 3.5 years. I certainly never saw this coming. I didn't expect it, and all credit goes to my partner, the founder of Noggin Notes, Safisa Rapinga, down in Cambodia, loyally and diligently holding down the fort, but not just simply continuing to make things happen, but also expanding. So for those of you who don't know, we have a Noggin Notes Africa and a Noggin Notes Cambodia now. And I could not be more humbled to be part of something so great. For a couple of years now, I've been pretty proud to say that I have an international podcast, and that's not international simply because it's on the internet, but because we have interviews from people all across the globe. And for a guy, born and raised in a little town of Reno, Nevada, the biggest little city, by the way. It's not so little, but it is small compared to major metropolis areas like New York and LA and many, many others across the world that are much larger than New York and LA. It's a little bizarre, but thanks to the advantage of the interwebs, we are able to connect in ways that we never thought possible, and things that are just science pulp fiction of yesteryear are actually manifesting in today's world, and I think that's pretty cool. So if you want to know what's going on in the mental health realm in other parts of the world, check out Noggin Notes Africa and Noggin Notes Cambodia. Our hosts are incredible. I think they're better than I am at this, which isn't saying much. I'm just an amateur trying to figure it out on his own. But I think they do a wonderful job, and it's just really, really special for me to be connected to something like that. So check out Noggin Notes Cambodia, Noggin Notes Africa, if you want to enrich and develop your noggin the way that we originally intended when we set forth doing this thing back in summer of 2017, and really precedes that. It was winter of 2016 that we first started talking about this. So thanks, Safiso. Really appreciate you, brother. It means a lot to me to be along on this journey. Today's podcast is my interview with Colleen Caminisch. She's a colleague. She works in the Mindfulness Based Stress Reduction arena, I guess you could call it. And I learned a ton by talking to her. We go back all the way to undergrad where we barely knew each other, but now we kind of run in the same circles, and she teaches a lot, and she consults, and she does some really wonderful things. I look up to her. I consider her somebody I would point to if you're interested in getting into anything to do with health and healing as it relates to the mind and being able to calm yourself and pull yourself in the present moment and really live life without a lot of tumult and interference. And, who isn't surrounded by that these days? So Colleen Caminisch is our guest. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think you will too. It's really interesting and illuminating. Our podcast is sponsored, as always, by Audible, and you can go get a free 30-day trial through audibletrial.com/nogginnotes. Download a free audiobook. Keep it even after you cancel if you want to cancel, but you probably won't because Audible is awesome. And if you're already into audio content, as I suspect you are if you're listening to this, then you'll probably keep your membership and continue downloading books and like I said, educating and enriching your noggin. Also by Zephyr Wellness, my company that I co-own here in Northern Nevada with Lindsay Bell, my co-owner and business partner. And if you want to learn more about us, check out zephyrwellness.org or go download some of our free content that we publish through the YouTube channel and the Instagram feed and the Twitter and the Facebook and all those things. And then last but not least, I'm part of an organization called Walk the Talk America. If you want to get a free and anonymous mental health screening, go to WTTA.org. That's Walk the Talk America, WTTA.org/love. And you can get a free and anonymous mental health screening. Check in on yourself. But don't just do it for yourself. Share it with other people. Let other people know that they can get a free and anonymous mental health screening through WTTA.org. And without further delay, here's my Colleen Caminisch interview. I hope you enjoy it. Today we are welcoming Colleen Caminisch. Hello, Colleen. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me on today. I'm doing well.
Yeah, my pleasure to have you on. And we crossed paths recently. Recently, it was like 2 years ago, at some conference of something, I think at the VA maybe. But we actually went to undergrad together many moons ago, and then reconnected professionally, which is kind of cool. And I didn't know what you were doing, and I wanted you on here to explain what it is that you do, because I think mindfulness based stress reduction is a very, very cool concept, and it can be applied in many different areas. But before I go trampling on your credentials and your profession, maybe you should introduce yourself.
Okay, yeah, thank you for having me on. So actually, my professional background, I have an MBA that I got from the UNR, which is really cool. And then I actually went on and got a postgraduate degree in international business and trade law. And now I do something really different. But I feel like all of those pieces have sort of supported me in my efforts. And one part of that was I was super stressed out when I started my professional career. And I was really struggling. And I'd spent like a little bit of time in Italy during undergrad. And I remember when I was there, I was like feeling so like calm and relaxed and at ease. And so then I developed this returning to Italy problem, which eventually led me to trying to move to Italy. And when that didn't work out, I was super stressed in the place that usually took away my stress. And at that point in my life, somebody had given me a book called Wherever You Go, There You Are. Mm-hmm. And it was by Jon Kabat-Zinn, and who also has another book called Full Catastrophe Living, which is about mindfulness based stress reduction. So one day I was sitting in my apartment in Italy, and I thought, well, I better read this book because I'm super stressed, and this is the place that usually made me feel better. So I read actually just the testimonials, and they were so powerful. I decided to leave Italy and to move to Massachusetts and take this course. And I was skeptical because, I have a master's degree in business. I tend to really be, I would say, creative, but also mostly analytical about decision making. And I thought, boy, this is probably going to be like a bunch of hippies teaching this class, and I don't know what I'm signing up for. And it was life-changing for me. It really helped shift a lot of my perspectives. So that was like 13 years ago. And then after I completed that course, I decided this was a path that I wanted to follow. So they have a teacher training path, which I completed. And then I started teaching here in Reno because there wasn't anything like that here. And then I actually got recruited by the University of Massachusetts Medical School to work at the Center for Mindfulness, where Jon Kabat-Zinn had founded the program. So that was like a dream scenario for me. Yeah. So I got to be there for about a year, and then really missed impacting a community of people that I actually saw and interacted with. And I think that's something special about Reno. It's like, if you do good work here, you can really feel the benefits in the community. And so that's been really powerful. And now since then, the Center for Mindfulness has reformed at the Brown School of Public Health. And so now I work for them remotely, and I help teach other teachers on the training path. I mentor them all over the world. So it's really special. So that's sort of my very strange and winding road with a career path and what I do now.
That's good, though. And I'm glad you're saying that, because I think, our listening audience is truly international. It's from all over the world. And for those of you who may be new to the program, we've been doing this podcast pretty much weekly for about 3.5 years. But recently, Safiso, who's the founder of Naga Notes, also spun off 2 new podcasts, one in Africa and one in Cambodia. From one of our guests on the show actually is hosting the Africa podcast. And so when you're speaking, you are truly speaking to an international audience, because we've formed audiences all around the world, and it's very, very special to me, and it's something I hold very preciously. But with regard to the people who listen, I think it's validating to hear you say that you have degrees in different things, and then finally you found this other career that really fired your passions up. Because as a person who has had several false start careers myself, it's okay. I think that's the message, is to say it's okay to see people who are succeeding they didn't start out that way in their 20s necessarily. Some of us find our way later on through life, and all those experiences are not wasted. They're actually quite useful in whatever it is that we end up doing later. So thanks for saying that. You also work for the University of Nevada. That's the acronym before is the UNR, is University of Nevada, Reno. And you work for the School of Medicine up there too. What do you do with them?
So I actually used to work for them. I have since transitioned out, but I still work for the University of Nevada, Reno. I actually teach a class in the business school now. But I used to work directly with the I'm just going to go back to the acronym.
UNR. Yeah, that's fine.
UNR Med.
We could say that people outside of the UNR culture have to say Nevada. Yes. But that's only to distinguish us from that other school down south called UNLV. But go on. In-state rivalry.
So most of the time, I started there with a business job. So I was the institutional coordinator of graduate medical education, which means that there's an accreditation body that basically puts rules into place to protect and inform what resident physicians learn throughout their training. So I spent about 2 years in that role, and it was really amazing. It gave me, so much admiration for what physicians do, what they sacrifice, what they go through, the reasons they go into medicine, and just the intensity of that. Like, this is, to me, I feel like the people that go on that path, it's a calling, because there's so much behind that. So then when I went to UMass to work for them, when I came back to Reno, came back here, and they let me come back in more of a capacity of wellness, since I had done a little bit of that work here. So I had worked with the med students, teaching them mindfulness based stress reduction, which we could see had a significant impact. And then I got to do modified versions of that with the resident physicians. And then I actually started teaching a curriculum called Mindful Practice, created by two physicians that I met when I was working at the UMass Center for Mindfulness, who were trained like I was to teach mindfulness. But when they went back into the practice of medicine, they thought, oh, there's so many ways we can apply this to what we do in patient care. And not just in the aspect of caring for patients, but for what we experience as clinicians in the room with patients. So if you look at, in my career path, looking at the accreditation and the curriculum for physicians, there's a lot of emphasis around how to tell somebody bad news, or how to address suffering from the patient perspective. But the clinicians themselves are left out, that they're also in the room experiencing, witnessing. And I think with COVID-19, people are more aware of that than they probably ever were, that these clinicians are, holding the hands of dying patients while their families can't be there. And so this curriculum is really centered around these topic areas and shared stories, because they have such a unique experience. So then I transitioned from the School of Medicine. I'm now the executive director of the Nevada Physician Wellness Coalition, where we've brought this same curriculum in, and instead of just helping one institution, we're really trying to help hospitals across the state so that we can help clinicians across the state.
That's super cool, and it's relevant to mental health practitioners as well. And I know we have some of them in our audience, because one of the recurring themes throughout the summer and fall and winter is how do we as the care providers hold a space for people who are struggling when we ourselves are struggling? Because that's typically not the way it works. Typically the way it works is we're seen as having it together. We may or may not, but never have we seen broad-based, across the population type of stress. And so it's really hard when you're dealing with concepts like countertransference, which is a fancy way of saying you're struggling with the same thing the other person's struggling with, only you're not supposed to share it because it contaminates the exchange. And when we're all struggling with this, how do we stay on task, right, and still provide empathy and compassion and a safe place for people to heal? And I can only imagine how much more that impacts the medical community because of the real raw outcome of death and not being able to do anything about it in a profession where, Western medicine